our protoprint program that has been supported by the EU delegation for the past 4 years. I'd like to invite Mr. Thomas, the Minister Councillor and Head of Sustainable Modernization of the EU delegation to India, to open the program with some remarks.
So, good morning and thank you for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning to everyone and welcome. As Lubna said, the European Union has been supporting this very important project for the last few years. I'd like to thank all of you for the interest that you've shown in this project by coming here today to hear more about it. I'm also here to learn more about this project, and I'm very interested and to hear the conclusions which have been set out in the papers that will be presented. I want to thank Lubna and the team from KPT and also my colleagues from the delegation who are here with me this morning for organizing the event. The project that we are highlighting today has received support from a specific program funded by the European Union, which is called Switch Asia. And this program funds pilot projects which help companies to adopt cleaner technologies and more sustainable industrial practices. And it also aims to help consumers to act more responsibly in the choices that they make in their daily lives. Since 2007, so almost 20 years, this program has funded a wide range and a big number of projects in all sectors in a range of countries in the region. And these projects have covered issues like energy efficiency, the agri-food sector, the fishing industry, textiles and leather, tourism, logistics and freight. So what we're going to hear today sits in that broader framework, which has now been implemented by over 500 partners in Asia and with European partners. And it has covered 100 private sector associates and has indirectly benefited up to 80,000 micro and small enterprises in the participating countries. So we look forward today to hearing more about the inclusive models for resource management and circular economy transitions from the project which is being implemented, ranging from collection of plastic waste for recycling to emerging models for reuse. The project has been aimed at transforming the informal plastic recycling sector, which is very important, into an efficient, economically performing and also socially just model. The project is coming to an end in the next few months. So it's very important at this stage to ensure that the experience that has been acquired and the lessons that have been learned in the past 3 years are captured, and that the information is also shared to facilitate and encourage sustainable transition, which is our overall objective. Let me also say something about what we are doing in the European Union, because it can also inform the discussion in India. So there is a range of European legislation which addresses recycling, waste, plastics, and so on. One of the key pieces of legislation is the European Union's Waste Shipments Regulation. And this has a very important role in advancing our European transition to a circular economy. And one of the objectives of that regulation is to prevent illegal shipments of waste, but also to reduce environmental damage, and also to promote responsible handling and recovery of waste materials. And this regulation also ensures that recyclable materials and secondary raw materials circulate efficiently and safely within the European internal market, but it also closes loopholes when it comes to the export of hazardous or difficult to recycle waste to other countries, including India. And as you may know, that regulation foresees the drawing up of a list of countries to which exports of non-hazardous waste from the European Union are authorized. And that list will be adopted, or should be adopted, in November of 2026. India has applied to be a destination for the receipt of waste from the European Union, and the review of the applications is currently ongoing. Now, looking even further ahead, in 2026, the European Commission plans to propose a new Circular Economy Act, so a new piece of legislation, and this will address the issue of circularity in the European economy. And this will look at issues like product design, sustainable sourcing, extended producer responsibility, and also the control of waste shipments to guarantee that the materials re-entering the market contribute positively without causing any further damage and also social harm elsewhere. So there's an ongoing public consultation on the preparation of this future piece of legislation. That consultation is open until the 6th of November. It's not just for Europeans to contribute to that process. So if any of you are interested in making the European Commission aware of your views, then this is your opportunity to do so. So that I say that because the presentation of these papers today come at a very good time for us, because it will help us to understand better the kind of issues that are faced in a country, a very important country outside the European Union, but in addressing issues that are common to all of us. And India's experience, and also the experience of the project, and any recommendations that come out of it are important for us to understand in our thinking as well. So finally, on behalf of the European Union delegation, I want to again thank you for being here. I look forward very much to hearing the presentation of the papers, and I wish everyone a very fruitful discussion for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will start off with the first topic today, which is our paper on just recycling. The format we'll follow for today is, for each paper, we'll have one of the authors present the key highlights and key findings of the paper, followed by a panel discussion in which we will invite experts who have different perspectives on the sector to share additional learnings and either validate or contest some of our insights that we've shared in the papers. So to start with the recycling panel, I would like to invite Rajiv Singh to present. Rajiv has been working with us for many years now, and he is the one who has set up this recycling unit and runs it with Ranjit, who comes from a family of waste pickers. So they have the first-hand knowledge and experience in running this unit. Rajiv will give you an overview of our journey, why we set up this unit, what were we hoping to achieve, what were the challenges we encountered along the way, and where do we stand right now. As Mr. Thomas said our project officially ends in the next couple of months. And so we are at the juncture where we take the call on whether we continue this beyond the project or not. I'll allow Rajiv to share all those details with you, and hopefully we'll have a fruitful discussion after.
Thank you, Lubna. Good morning, everyone. What's happening? Uh, Through this presentation, I'll be sharing the journey of our 2 years, which we had, and the experience that we had in setting up this unit, running this unit, and the challenges that we faced, and the key nuances of the recycling unit. Over the last 3 decades, the waste picker organization in Pune, basically KKP, KP, Swachh, and KP have been have understood the recycling from the waste pickers' perspective. They have done this collection, sorting, segregating, and placing it into a portable units, and then selling it to the cooperative scrap shop, which is waste picker owned and waste pickers operated. But what happens next? That has always been a void for the organization, all the waste pickers organization which I mentioned. So to understand this, what happens with the plastic which has been come to the cooperative scrap shops, what happens to that? Whether it's upcycled, whether it's downcycled, which is good plastic, which is bad plastic, we have thought of taking up this recycling initiative. In Pune, 30 to 40% of the income of the waste pickers come from the selling of the recyclables that they collect on a daily basis. Yet they have been denied of fair prices on the hands of the private scrap shops. Our experience with the cooperative scrap shops has shown that moving up the value chain leads to greater bargain for the waste pickers. Also, it promotes fairer market practices and a better working condition for the people engaged in this activity. And finally, whatsoever profit is generated, it could be shared equally among the waste pickers who are involved in into this activity. Project Protoprint. The value proposition for this project was with thought of setting up a small, low-scale, high-quality recycling unit. We were not there to compete with the existing recyclers, but to set up a unit which produces a good quality granules, so that we are able to set up a partnership with the brands who are ready to accept high-quality traceable material which is produced as a recycling unit, which follows all the environmental and labor compliances. Here also at the unit, what uniquely that we did is that we accepted all the waste stream, rigid plastic that came into the waste stream, rather than just cherry picking the high value material. This was basically done to ensure that the waste picker's income doesn't get hampered. Because if we just thought of purchasing the high value material, they end up selling the low value material at a very lower rate, or even it gets unsold. The main aim was achieved by integrating the aggregation and recycling in the same unit. That was the main purpose because of which we do the aggregation and recycling at the same place. The common recycling typology that's prevalent and it's been found in different literatures is there's been 3 different ways in which the market functions. One is brand-led recycling, where the brand controls the entire recycling operations. They source the post-consumer waste from the market, and then inherently at their own unit, they'll do the processing. But what happens is that this excludes the small and middle level of recyclers to be a part of this value chain. Next is vertically integrated model. Here what happens that the recyclers, basically these units are being funded by the CSR and by the impact fund. They buy the high-ended, high-value material and leave the low-value material to be handled by the informal workers, which face difficulty in terms of handling those material. And in informal operation, if you look at, it's a high scale and a cost-cutting mechanism. This is their mantra which they follow for the recycling. Now I'll talk to on our project that how it came up. I've already discussed how waste is collected in Pune. After collection, the waste pickers store it into the storage unit, which is a Pijra. Next, they sell it to their own cooperative scrap shops. Now, this material coming to the cooperative scrap shop is sourced at our own protoprint unit. Around 20 metric ton of rigid plastic is sourced on a monthly basis from 4 of the cooperative scrap shops which are operational in Pune and Pimpri-Chinchwad Municipal Corporation. At the unit, we process all the entire chains, right from collection to the conversion. The collected mixed fugga, which is a colloquial term which is used by the waste pickers for terming the rigid plastic which comes into the waste stream, it comes to the unit. Then it's segregated into 20 different categories based on the resin code and on the color. And based on our operational data, we have found out that the per kg cost of sorting comes to be 5.2 rupees and 10% of the material goes into reject. Next process is grinding. That is batch-wise. It's a batch-wise process in which the sorted fugga is cut into smaller pieces by the help of the grinder. Here, per kg cost which comes out is around 2% and the rejection ratio is quite less, around 1%. The major loss of the material that comes up is in washing and density separation. The grinded flakes are first subjected to density separation. During the density separation, the denser material, which is owing to the fillers which has been used in making this material, settles down. And if this material comes into the recycling process, it hampers the entire quality of the granules. Hence, the metals which settles into the density tank has to be skimmed off, and only the material which is floating on the tank goes for the further processing. Next is mixing. Here, the dried washed flakes goes into compounding process where we add colors based on the requirements of the product manufacturers. They want a certain quality and certain brightness of our granules that we have to comply with. Next process is extrusion. Here the compounded material is fed into the extruder, and here also you'll see that reject percent is quite significant. It's around 3%. It's just because of the metal and the foil which comes with the washed flakes into the system. I'll talk about the rejects in the later slides also. This is the protoprint snapshot. Per month, we are collecting around 20 metric ton of fugga material from the cooperative scrap shops, and to ensure the optimal usage of the machinery and optimize the process, we source 5 to 6 metric ton of flakes from the external vendors, from the aggregators which are located nearby the recycling unit, but they procure material from the waste pickers in the other part of the city itself. Sale is around 14.5 metric ton of granules per month, and the other material which comes into the waste stream like PET, PVC, PS, it's around 4.7 metric ton. Currently, 23 people are working at the unit, out of which 15 are female and 8 are male. Currently, for the last 4 to 5 months, we are operating the unit into 2 shifts. Morning shift is majorly run by the women, and the second shift that starts around 3:30, it's a men-driven shift. In terms of forward linkage, we have found out a forward linkage in the close periphery of the unit itself. It's in the range of 5 kilometers. PP granules, the vendor process the PP granules into household items like dustbin, mugs, and buckets. For HDB plastic, there is a vendor who processes it into ISI marked agricultural pipes. This is the overview of the recycling operations, where you can find what's the input, stage-wise input, what's the process which is followed, what are the different constraints, what's the output and cost per kg, rejection ratios, and the industrial standard, what's the normal industrial standard which is followed across the segment. Next is economics of the recycling at Protoprint. Here I'll try to specify that I'm just talking pertaining to the recycling unit which it can't be a market standard. This is a unit which we have been functioning for the last 2 years, and the way we function, we are not the technical expert, and it has been a long learning curve for us also. And number of choices that we have made, it's not the same with the at market practices. Hence, this is not the reflective of the entire market, but this is reflective of the small recycling unit which is compliance with the environmental and all the labor laws. So at the current operation, which is in 2 shifts that we are currently operating the unit, the total cost of the recycling which is coming, it's around 78 rupees. But the final price that we are able to realize after sale of the granules is just 63 rupees. Here you can find there is a viability gap of 14.8 rupees, which is approximately 15 rupees per kg. I'm talking about the per kg cost. Based on our experiences, we are very much clear about the limitations of the machine, the manpower, about the infrastructure that we do have. We have scaled it up into 3 shifts operation. And here we have got a figure that even if we operate the unit into 3 shifts for 24 hours, 24 into 7 into 365 throughout the year, we will just be able to reach to a break-even point, that too under ideal condition. Hence, we have come to the conclusion that slowly we'll be wrapping up the rolling down the unit and convert this unit into a model recycling unit where the citizens, students, and other stakeholders can come and see the technical know-hows of the recycling domain. These are the rejects which I was talking about. The first reject, you see that it comes in the sorting phase. It's approximately 10% of the material that's being sorted. Here, the major category of reject which is there is the liquids in the bottles. For example, medicine bottle is there is a liquid. If there's a Pond's bottle, there is a Pond's talc is there, Pond's cream is there. Fruit trays, you must have said fruit and cake trays, which is not at all recyclable. The main cause of this is that it has a lower melting point, and if it goes through the current input that we put to the extruder, it's going to burn and deteriorate the entire quality of the material. Medicine strips just come into the thermoset plastics thermoflasks do come into the waste stream. Luggage bags, you must have seen big duffel bags, black color. It's not at all recyclable. It finally gets dumped into the landfills. Dust, food contaminates. In the washing process, I was talking about the fillers, how the fillers are impacting adversely the recyclability of the material. So these are the materials which settles down in the tank, in the density separation tank. And these are not olefins. We have consulted even with the National Chemical Laboratories. The scientists visited the facility and they have said that this can't be recycled. And if you even add small quantity of it, it's going to hamper your quality. But in normal practice, around 2 to 3% of this material, other recyclers are adding into these processes. Third is the extrusion, which I was talking about. It's just because of the metal contaminants and foils that the plastic gets stuck into the process during the extrusion process. Now, I'll talk about the recycling profit at the cost of what and whom. Here, most of the recyclers just buy a particular resin of the material or particular grade of material that they want to work with. But the burden passes on to the waste pickers who are actually collecting this material and the scrap shops who are aggregating this material, because they have to sort this material at their facility. Already they do have, in a normal practice, you will see a normal scrap shop is around 1500 to 2000 square feet at max, where they aggregate a hell lot of material. Working in that sort of condition, sorting the material as per the requirement of the recycler, it's a very difficult affair. And even in terms of policy, if you look at policy of favoring the post-collection infrastructure, if you look at policies have been there in setting up the material recovery facilities. Land is provided almost free of cost. Necessary infrastructure is provided by the municipality. But nothing such has been done in terms of the initial level, in terms of setting up of scrap shops compliant with all the regulations and all, or whether in terms of setting up a special zones for the aggregation itself, where waste can be collected and it could be brought in there. This imbalances risk, undermining the livelihood, hollowing the base of the recycling pyramid basically. Next, I'll talk about the limitation of the plastic and product circularity. Initially, also in the beginning, also I told about how additives are hampering the entire recyclability of the material. Initially, it does reduces the cost, but the next phase is that it can't be recycled, or even if it's recycled, the quality is very poor. Poor material and product design that we have seen in the recent cases contaminates, and highly strong dyes and adhesives are being used. And if it comes into the recycling stream, it hampers the entire process. If you look at a few of the bottles, if the material is of HD but its cap is of some other material like PP and all, it's very difficult for the waste pickers to actually identify what is HD and what is PP in this regard. Also, if you look at toys and other multi-material, there you will find springs, other metal things which comes into the play, and these material needs to be broken into pieces before putting it into further process, which adds on to the burden of the waste pickers who are already bearing all the burden of collection and working at the unit. There is a need of much circular design standard. For example, you have seen a parachute bottle with a minimal dyes, minimal painting, and it's made up of mono material. Some sort of policy decision should come up which favors the mono material packaging. Uh, Now I'll talk about the policy recommendation. Through the 2 years of our managing this unit, we have a lot of field experiential learning. Initially, when we are about to set up this unit, we're not very much sure at which place we should be setting this unit, whether it should be set up in non-agricultural zone or in residential zone or in some sort of industrial development corporation, MIDC, or some sort of that place. Right from there, we started this unit. We are not sure which machinery is going to domain people who are working in the close periphery. They were very supportive in this regard, and the relation that we have built in the span of last 5 to 6 years, working with other projects also with them, it has helped us a lot. The policy recommendation will basically focus on material design, EPR financing, land zoning infrastructure, tax reforms, environmental clearances, knowledge building, and demand creation. First would be the material design, which I have already talked about. It will, if the government mandates a safer and recyclable packaging, which are limitation of the additives which could actually be added, so that eventually it doesn't hamper the recyclability of the material, that would be a good thing to start with. Standardizing the composition of a particular packaging material, that this should be the minimum, this would be the maximum additives which it could hold. Promoting mono-material packaging and discourage that designs which hinders recovery. For example, you must have seen that currently the designs are favored which are very lightweight, so as to reduce the cost so as to reduce the production cost. But eventually, this leads to the lesser recovery of this material, as it's not at all that economically valuable for the waste picker or some other entity working in the waste to collect it. Next is demand creation. There could be a GST benefit and the minimum recycling content mandate to drive this market adoption of the recyclates in the packaging. There should be a mandated labeling on the plastic product to disclose actual recycling content and the recyclability of the material, which enables the consumer to make the sound decision. Next would be the enabling compliances. We also try to register our process into the EPR portal. Initially around 1 year went into just to receive the consent to establish from the municipal pollution control board. Next, around 4 to 5 months went to get the consent to operate from the respective board. Now, when we try to go for EPR registration, actually all the paperwork, all the ownership was in name of Kashtakari Panchayat, which is a charitable trust. But EPR mandates that the entity which is making the sales, all the documents should be in their name, and then only they could be registered into the portal. Kashtakari Panchayat being a charitable trust, it can't do the sales. So the sister organization, which is Swachh Plus, where all the GST invoicing and other waste related work invoicing takes place, supports us in this perspective. We tried to change the names in name of Swachh Plus, but it was very cumbersome. We didn't get that support from the municipality also. In terms of tax reform, if we talk about, currently there's a uniform, I don't know about the recent GST, what it has happened, but earlier it was a fixed around 18% of the GST on all forms of plastic, whether it's high value or low value plastic. So if we reduce the GST and offer tax incentives for recycled content, it will reduce the burden on the small recycler and promote use of recycled material. In our case also, as we are compliant to all the norms, whether in terms of making purchase or in terms of making sale, when we try to sell our product, we faced a number of encounters. People are not at all interested to deal in cash, NEFT or bank transfers. They wanted to deal in cash. Nobody was interested to purchase the material which is GST compliances or invoices which are GST compliances. But then too, with our regular engagement with the vendors across the periphery for several months, we brought them on a table and currently we are making sales to them. But here also we are facing a lot of trouble. Our payment is getting delayed. They are like, unless they make a sale of X amount of material on GST, they won't be able to pay us. Until as they offset their GST, they won't be making us the payment. Now, in terms of environmental clearance, which I already talked about, I hope that some mandate or policy level interventions does come up which simplify the CTE and CTO approvals and informs compliances to ensure functional effluent treatment plant in the recycling zones. I think there should be a centralized effluent treatment plants, because all the informal or the other recyclers we are working in, they're not that capable of setting up a effluent treatment plant and managing its operations on their own. The other major gap that we found while we were operating this unit was there is a huge knowledge gap. There were no literatures available how recycling should be proceeded. Even we had a training with some institutions like CPET and all. But basically, the kind of training that they foster is pertaining to the next process. What happens to the granules, that is product manufacturing, rather than how to recycle the material. So there should be a knowledge bank where all this training material are kept together and people can access this. Like in ITI also, there are a number of courses like plumbing courses, electrician courses. There should be a separate course pertaining to recycling of the post-consumer waste. So this is everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv. I'm sure that everyone has questions, but maybe we can take them in the panel as well. I want to just add one thing, is the forward linkages. Rajiv mentioned that we ended up selling mostly to local buyers who were manufacturing the products locally. A reason for this was our original proposition was, let us do high value, high margin, but at a low scale. The challenge we encountered is the kind of brands that make big sustainability commitments and would be willing to pay a premium for material are simply not able to transact with small scale recyclers. So we engaged for a long time, for about a year with IKEA. After which we were finally told that everything checks out, but we simply can't afford to work at such a small scale, because IKEA can't engage with 2,000, 3,000 different suppliers, and they really need some level of scale. So we definitely faced challenges in balancing out the original value proposition. We also started with that assumption and therefore had aggregation and recycling in the same unit, which really cuts your efficiencies in terms of how you can optimize space and processes. I'm sure some of you would have much better insights and experiences on aggregation, recycling, what kind of space it needs, and what kind of support should be given by cities. There's also something to be said for the macroeconomic conditions. Since COVID, the plastic market has been fairly volatile. We've had PET, which has remained fairly stable, but is responding to EPR rates as well, and PET is getting kind of a jump. But HDPE has crashed over the last 3 years, which was around the same time that we set up this market. So those conditions have also definitely affected cash flows and also affected our strategies in terms of where we were looking to maximize and generate value, and it led to a lot of course correction during our learning curve as well. On the rejection items, one thing unfortunately that happens in recycling is that there are these byproducts, and these byproducts are not the fault of the recycler, but the recycler gets straddled with having to deal with the materials, the chemical residue from inside the bottles, and the things like the jali, where the market standard is to burn it so that you can reuse that metal mesh, because it's a fairly expensive item to keep buying, that you have to change every 15 to 20 minutes literally, and there isn't a really accessible solution, and neither does the price of recycled plastic cover the cost of buying a new jali and safely disposing the old one every 15 minutes. So there are some real issues because of which recycling looks dirty, and some of these loops are not closed, and it becomes very easy to villainize the recyclers and the aggregators as dumping and polluting. And this has happened in places like Malegaon, where the recyclers have been pushed out of the city because they are associated with the waste that gets produced. And this is definitely something that plagues the informal sector, but I'm sure is a concern for some of the larger formal recyclers as well, who we'll hear from on the panel. So thank you very much, Rajiv. You will introduce the panelists now. Okay, ठीक है. So Rajiv will just moderate a panel discussion. I will call up a few of our guests who have experience in recycling and in the plastic sector. Imtiaz ji, who runs an organization called Sarthak in Madhya Pradesh. He has a very solid experience in running material recovery centers and recycling centers at a much larger scale and can share his insights with us. Mr. Rajesh Pawar, founder and lead CEO of 21st Century Polymers, again has stellar experience in the recycling space for about 35 years, and specifically in plastics, also now looking at some newer materials in plastic waste. And we've had many discussions about how to make recycling viable, which I'm sure he'll share with you. Rosita from Without is working on the hardest to recycle materials. So they've been set up in Pune and Pimpri, and been targeting MLP. I'm sure you've all heard of the MLP made of sunglasses. So she's heading Impact at Without, and she'll share her experience about recycling and what it is really like to work with the most difficult to recycle materials. And Siddharth from CSE, who has been engaged in the policy space, not just in India, but also internationally, and has a bird's eye view of the plastic waste sector. And I'll invite Rajiv back to moderate.
Good morning once again to all the panelists here. There will be a common question to all, but I'll like to start with Rajesh sir. The level of challenges that we faced in terms of making the plastic recycling valid, how have you been managed to run a financially viable recycling business, meeting all the mandates and all? Why are others operating informally but you are operating formal? And your thought on the report? This is the first question.
Thank you so much for giving me opportunity and having me here. As you shared earlier, that I'm into this sector for more than 3.5 decades. So we are first Indian recycling company to exhibit in USA, first to exhibit in Dubai. We have exhibited in Germany, China Plus, and many exhibitions across India. When I share these things, I just want to say that Indian recycling companies are very well versed with the latest technologies, processes, and how to recycle plastics. So I'm one of those who are running recycling unit, financially viable recycling unit, complying with all the rules. And I have a counter question, if you allow me. When you say informal recycling, what do you mean by informal recycling? I mean, the recyclers who are doing recycling at a low level because they have GST, they have consent to operate. So how they are informal?
Basically, what my understanding about informal recycling is that the recycling units where the workers are not paid as per the minimum wage. These units which are not at all environment compliant, and the workers who are working there stays in the campus of the recycling unit itself, working 24/7 without any formal leaves or any paid leaves. So as per my understanding, I take informal recycling.
Okay, so whosoever is not complying with the any rules,
Yes,
that is informal. Okay. So yes, that is the case in across many sectors, not only in the recycling. So we can discuss only who are complying with the rules, of course. And waste becomes a raw material when someone picks it up from the road or pick it up from the say dump site, or someone who's coming to my household or any bulk waste generator. He take that waste and segregate valuables, and whatever is not valuable as per him, he throws that into the municipal vehicle. So what he does is he segregates he collect that and give it to some nukkad kabadi wala or corner waste aggregator, small aggregator. What that aggregator do, that small aggregator segregates into say flexibles, rigids, and PET. PET more organized. So why it is, we can comment later. And the next aggregator will buy say flexibles. He segregate into say BOPP, PVC, HF, and LDP. It goes to next aggregator. At every level, price will increase because they are putting their efforts, they need something out of it. And next level, the guy who buys say any one polymer, he segregates into again four fractions. One is transparent, second is white, third one is plain, fourth one is colored, and fifth one is black. Now recyclers come in the picture because recycler can accept only one type of polymer with one color. 95% of recyclers in India accepts only one type of polymer with one color waste. So this is norm. As it is a business as any other regular business is. We buy waste at a particular price, do conversion that will cost a conversion cost, add my profit and sell it to the market. So this is how any financially viable recycling unit is working in India.
My next question will be to Imtiaz sir. You have handled waste coming from MRFs in multiple cities. What is the quality of waste like जो कि आप MRFs में आ रही है? Do you agree that cities must be responsible for allocating spaces to sort, clean and store dry waste to ensure higher level of recycling? And does this guarantee कि if city provides a space to sort, segregate, then higher level of recyclability will actually be attained? Do you think that this should be a market of
आप सभी को हमारा स्वच्छ नमस्कार। देखिए, जो फील्ड लेवल पे इश्यूज है कलेक्शन के प्राइमरी, सॉरी और अनकन्वीनियंट, जो मटेरियल कलेक्ट हो रहा है हाउस होल्ड लेवल पर, एक्चुअली प्राइमरी लेवल पे हाउस होल्ड ओनर ने ही उसमें तो वैल्यूएबल मटेरियल को अलग किया, और जब मेरे डोर टू डोर कलेक्शन के व्हीकल्स उनके पास पहुंचे तो उनको वो हाई लेवल मटेरियल नहीं मिला। अब डोर टू डोर कलेक्शन में जो मटेरियल आया वो हमारे जो मटेरियल रिकवरी फैसिलिटी है या जो हमारे ट्रांसफर स्टेशन है वहां पर आया, उसमें से उस मटेरियल को हमने अलग किया। अब इन दोनों मटेरियल में जो क्वालिटी और क्वांटिटी का डिफरेंट है वो बहुत बड़ा है। तो जो डोर टू डोर कलेक्शन में जो वेस्ट आ रहा है वो उस क्वालिटी का नहीं आ रहा कि जिससे कि एक वैल्यू जनरेट की जाए। प्राइमरी लेवल पे जो वेस्ट निकल गया है वो स्क्रैप डीलर्स या कबाड़ी वालों को जा रहा है, तो वैल्यूएबल मटेरियल वहां चला गया। अब सेकंड स्टेज पे शॉर्टिंग हुआ, और शॉर्टिंग्स में जो मटेरियल निकल कर आया वो हमारे एमआरएफ पर पहुंचा। फिर हमने उसको 19 टाइप्स की अलग अलग वैरायटी एलडी, एचएमपीपी, पीवीसी सबको उसको कन्वर्ट किया, फिर उसको प्रोसेस किया, शेडिंग किया, और शेडिंग करके वॉशिंग किया, और फिर हमने उसको रिसाइकलिंग के लिए भेजा। तो पूरा जो वैल्यू चेन जो एक डेवलप हुआ है, इसमें हमें तीनों तरह के वेस्ट को इंटीग्रेट करके एमआरएफ पर लाना होगा। जो कबाड़ी वाले के पास गया है वो भी, और जो रैक पिकर्स के पास गया है वो भी, और जो डोर टू डोर कलेक्शन के अंदर आया है वो भी। भोपाल, इंदौर, खंडवा और ग्वालियर में हम लोगों ने कुछ इसी टाइप की प्रैक्टिस को डेवलप किया है। जो स्मॉल स्क्रैपर्स है, जो कबाड़ी वाला है, उनको भी अपने सिस्टम से जोड़ा है, और जो हाई वैल्यूज मिक्स फुग्गा की जो हो सकती है वो देने का हमने उनको प्रयास किया है। साथ ही जो गवर्नमेंट की स्कीम है, जैसे नेशनल लाइवलीहुड मिशन है, स्वच्छ मिशन है, उस प्रोग्राम से उनको जो भी फाइनेंशियल सपोर्ट चाहिए बैंक से वो उनको सपोर्ट किया। तो एक वैल्यू चेन बन के हमारे पास आया है, और जो एट सोर्स सेग्रीगेशन से लेके जो तीनों हमारे चैनल्स हैं वो पूरा मटेरियल हमारे पास लगभग 40% मटेरियल हमारे पास आना शुरू हुआ। तो जब आपके पास एक क्वालिटी आएगी और क्वांटिटी आएगी तो आप उसमें से एक अच्छा इनकम दे सकते हैं, और रिसाइकलर्स को एक सर्टेन मैट्रिक टन्स का पर मंथ में जो है आपको एक टारगेट से वो पूरा कर पाएंगे। तो जब तक कि होलिस्टिक अप्रोच आप कलेक्शन से लेके फाइनल रिसाइकलिंग तक नहीं लेंगे, वैसे रिजल्ट्स हमारे पास नहीं आएंगे। तो कोशिश आज के समय पे यह है कि हमें सभी तरह के वेस्ट को लेना है। सेकेंडली, जो आपका मैं प्रेजेंटेशन देख रहा था उसमें जो रिजेक्टेड की जो आपने बात की, रिजेक्टेड का भी एक मार्केट है, एक वैल्यू है। हमारे एमपी के अंदर बेनिफिट ये है कि बहुत सारे सीमेंट प्लांट्स हैं, लगभग 19 सीमेंट प्लांट्स हैं जिनको हम लोग ये जो नॉन रिसाइकल्स मटेरियल है उसको आरडीएफ के तौर पे दे रहे हैं। साथ ही मध्य प्रदेश में रोड कंस्ट्रक्शन में प्लास्टिक का इस्तेमाल काफी हुआ है, लगभग 18,000 किलोमीटर प्लास्टिक से रोड जो है वहां पर डेवलप हुई। तो एक अच्छा वैल्यू इस प्लास्टिक का 18 to 20 रुपीज kg रोड कंस्ट्रक्शन से निकला है। सेकेंड, जो पॉलीशीट डेवलप हो रहे हैं या पेवर ब्लॉक्स हैं, टाइल्स है, उसमें सारा रिजेक्टेड मटेरियल हमारा यूज हो रहा है। तो जितना मल्टी लेयर प्लास्टिक है, रिजेक्टेड मटेरियल जो हमारे डोर टू डोर कलेक्शन से हमारे सेग्रीगेशन शेड में आया और एमआरएफ पर आया, तो उसका पूरा एक साइंटिफिक पूरा एक डिस्पोजल है और इसका वैल्यू पूरा रैक पिकर्स को और जो भी हमारे चैलाइज पार्टनर है उनको जा रहा है।
सर, इससे ही एक और क्वेश्चन मुझे उभर के आता है जो आपने मुझे इनसाइट दी। हाई वैल्यू मटेरियल मतलब क्या बोलना चाह रहे हो, कौन सा मटेरियल हाई वैल्यू होगा? नेक्स्ट, आपने जो मैकेनिज्म बताई कि रिजेक्ट्स को कैसे हैंडल किया जा रहा है इन टर्म्स ऑफ रोड बनाने में या पेवर ब्लॉक्स बनाने में, कितना एनवायरमेंटली फ्रेंडली है वो, उसके लीचिंग इफेक्ट को कोई स्टडी आज तक किया है? हो सकता है कि एक साल में उसका कुछ इफेक्ट ना दिखे, आगे जाके हेल्थ हजार्ड्स दिखे, सॉइल हेल्थ पे इश्यूज हो, ह्यूमन हेल्थ पे इश्यूज हो, तो उस विषय में आप क्या बोलना चाहेंगे सर?
देखिए, फर्स्टली जो रोड कंस्ट्रक्शन वाली टेक्नोलॉजी है, प्लास्टिक टू रोड जो है, 2008 में आईआईटी खड़गपुर के साथ एमपी गवर्नमेंट का एक एमओयू हुआ और हम लोगों ने उनसे ये टेक्नोलॉजी को परचेज किया। जो रोड्स हमने 15 साल पहले बनाए थे, मैक्सिमम वो रोड आज हमारे है। इसके बाद इंडियन रोड कांग्रेस ने और आईआईटी दिल्ली ने इस पे एक इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट किया है। जो इक्वा में और सॉइल में जो माइक्रो प्लास्टिक में या लीचड जो प्लास्टिक पहुंचा है वो 5 to 7% है। ये नहीं कहेंगे कि वो एकदम साफ है, लेकिन 5 to 7% प्लास्टिक जो है वो नीचे कुआ में या सॉइल में पहुंचा है। मैं प्रैक्टिकली तौर पे इस पे देता हूं कि अगर वही प्लास्टिक ओपन बर्न हो रहा होता या रूरल एरियाज में, अर्बन एरिया में फैला होता और उससे जो टॉक्सिस या इमिशंस जो निकलते, जो डाइऑक्सिन और फ्लोरॉन जो रिलीज होता आफ्टर बर्निंग, तो उससे तो बेटर है कि हम रोड कंस्ट्रक्शन में इसको यूज करें। सेकंड, जो प्लास्टिक का हम लोगों ने यूज मध्य प्रदेश में 2007 में किया कि प्लास्टिक को एज ए अल्टरनेटिव फ्यूल सीमेंट इंडस्ट्रीज में यूज करना। तो शुरुआती, अभी मेरी बीच में बात हो रही थी इसी सब्जेक्ट में कि शुरुआत में जब कोई टेक्नोलॉजी जब आती है, तो प्लास्टिक जब 2006-7 में सुप्रीम कोर्ट के गाइडेंस पे बैन हुआ सिंगल यूज प्लास्टिक और 20 माइक्रोन से नीचे का प्लास्टिक, अब तो 140 माइक्रोन का है। तो इस प्लास्टिक का पूरा एक कलेक्शन मैकेनिज्म डेवलप हुआ और इसको जब 800 से 1000 डिग्री टेम्परेचर पर बन गया, तो इसमें कुछ हद तक फ्लोरॉन और डाइऑक्सिन और टॉक्सिन्स रिलीज हुए। लेकिन जब इसे 1200 से 1400 डिग्री टेम्परेचर पर बन गया, तो डाइऑक्सिन और फ्लोरॉन जो थे वो जीरो हो गया। उसकी कैलोरिफिक वैल्यू भी जो थी वो कोल से 3 टाइम ज्यादा निकली। तो इसका पूरा इंपैक्ट असेसमेंट स्टेट पॉल्यूशन कंट्रोल बोर्ड, सेंट्रल पॉल्यूशन कंट्रोल बोर्ड और जितने सीमेंट प्लांट्स हैं उनके पास एक अपना खुद का एक सिस्टम है, जिससे कि वो पूरे प्लास्टिक की फीडिंग से लेके उसकी कैलोरिफिक वैल्यू जो गेन कर रहे हैं उसकी पूरे एक मॉनिटरिंग सिस्टम डेवलप किया। तो इसमें किसी भी तरह का कोई एनवायरमेंटल नेगेटिव इंपैक्ट नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी टाइम टू टाइम इस पे कोई इंपैक्ट असेसमेंट और स्टडीज होती रहती है।
Rajiv, I'd like to add a question, but I'll direct this at Rosita. I take the claims that TSG has made, sure, at face value, but the question of circularity still remains, right? That effectively you're directing these materials at downcycling them, they're not being circled back to the same product that they were in the plastic form. So the need for virgin plastic continues to remain, and that way, so fine, the road is there or the paver blocks are there, but once they degrade, that plastic is gone. You can't reuse that again. Your company has been working with MLP, which is the lowest of the low. So what do you think about the importance of companies, technologies that can work with these plastics? And more importantly, are there any pathways to scale this technology? Because I mean, we've seen that the spread of these plastics, the lower value plastic, is incredibly huge, right? And rising at an exponential level each year. So how do we think about that, and how do you in particular?
Sure. Thanks. So just before I start, I wanted to say that this is like my comeback into waste management space. I started my career on this topic with Daily Dam, with Center for Science and Environment, Swati is there, and then left my UN job actually to join this. Whether it's a good thing or not, I'll come to know, but it's very interesting to know that the space is still filled with very passionate and also crazy people, and that's what will bring the change. So to answer your question, speaking about without example, example, so we were talking about low value waste, right? MLP waste. Koi collect nahi karta hai, iska daam acha nahi milta hai, right? It's considered low value. But for us, this is where we are doubling down. This is where we are placing our bet. Globally, actually, less than 1% of MLP is recycled, like less than 1%. So you're right, this waste stream is huge. We are calling it low value, but where we need this innovation and R&D is how can we increase the value of this waste, right? And that's what we're doing at Without. So the whole technology is around chemistry, deep science, deep material science. So not stopping at extrusion or pellets, extraction, but actually making products out of it. So we started with sunglasses, right? This went viral, but this is not going to solve the problem, right? This is just a POC, and it's great that we have these sunglasses. 90% is the claim of recyclability, right? And you can do anything with it. Actually, you can it's up to like more than 10 to 12 cycles it can go through, which is quite rare, right? But how do you achieve that? It happens through investment in R&D. So the chemistry, material science is at the heart of it. And that is the hard part, right? It took 3 years for this company to get to this point. A lot of investment in R&D, and now they're not stopping at this, right? So we are looking at, say, Unilever, Volvo. These companies are giving us R&D grants to come up with POCs, right? We just made a shampoo bottle out of sachets, and we all know that sachets in South Asia is the #1 selling product of FMCG, and whether we like it or not, it is going to be there for a time, right? But how can you transform that? How can you also get back to these companies that, look, you are producing this waste, but there is a way to also turn it around? So EPR in a very, very let's get more deeper into EPR. Let's challenge the industry to get a bit better, and that's what is happening in this. So I can share a bit more about the technology. It's really still new. To give you a very basic indication, we started only with 5 kg per day capacity in a small lab, and now that's being scaled to 200 kg per day. It will be launched on 11th, but this is not commercial scale. So there is a lab, there is a commercial scale. We are in between because you cannot just reach the commercial scale right that. And then how can you do it in a decentralized manner? Right now we are based in Pune, in Pimpri Chinchwad. Many of you know this, you visited as well. But how can we actually replicate that so that this low value waste that we keep saying, which is growing, actually can be high value? We can pay better to our Safai Sathis. So the Safai Sathis we work with are now getting 2.5x increase in income. They are no longer just our collectors, they are part of our manufacturing team. And this is where we also want to scale deep. So there are only 14 informal waste workers. Now we are calling them our optimizers, manufacturers, but we want to scale deep with these 14, our super 14, make them into 40, 400 with the community. So yeah, lots to talk about there, but at the heart of it is innovation, is R&D. There needs to be investment, and that's where basically the challenges are also there. Yeah, I'll pause.
Then,
you brought up quite a few very important things, but EPR is also an important topic that we should talk about.
Yes.
Better to have that, Siddharth.
Siddharth, the next question that I'll be addressing to you will be pertaining to the EPR itself. She has raised the topic of this EPR. So my question would be, has EPR actually benefited enterprises and business in recycling, or has it led just a creation of consultant cadre without delivering any real benefit through the value chain?
So, firstly, thanks to Swachh for having me here, and thank you for placing me with such learned people. I will start by saying that, and me and Lubna have had, very deep discussions around क्या होता है, कैसे होता है. But see, recycling is definitely, it is about the material, but it's also about the geography, right? So something that can be recycled here in Delhi might not be recyclable in Patna. We have a low value, high value MLP2 shades in Pune, but let's say if I want to transport that MLP from Tripura, it'll cost us a lot of money, right? So recycling is about material, but it's also about geography. We have to understand that. So everything across geographies is not recyclable. And even if something is, if a material is designed to be recyclable, it might not get recycled if it is sold at a place where there's no collection, there's no infrastructure, there's no value chain. So that is how I have understood recycling. We tried to look at this back in 2021, and I think this study takes it one step ahead, where we now have some clarity on costs. How much does it cost to every unit operations? What is the cost associated? If I talk about EPR, I think. I mean, the intention was, I would like to believe it was always good, right? The intention is never to kind of, do anything wrong. But I feel the right set of people have, I mean, it's based on the polluter pays principle, right? But what we found in our studies, we've done 3 of them around EPR, is that yes, it is based on polluter pays, but in the system that we have in India, the polluter gets to decide how much I will pay, right? Which I think, or I believe, is the biggest problem that we have. The polluter should not have the liberty to decide how much I would want to pay. It's more about how much does it cost, right? And this is your share, and we are willing to take care of the rest, right? So nobody is asking. I mean, whenever we say that polluter pays principle, it does not mean that the polluter has to bear 100%. But yes, they do have to bear a considerable share of the burden. That was the whole idea. Now with our system, I think there are a lot of loopholes which have been exploited. If you look at the rates for EPR credits, they are as low as or as high as 1.5 rupees per kg, some even less, right? Probably the rates have changed since we last looked at them, but I don't think they've even crossed to for any kind of polymer. If you look at the other aspect, it's also about our system is talking about 4 different kinds: rigid, flexible, multi-layered, and compostable. Now biodegradable has also been added. Now we looked at how much we are putting in the market, how much recycling targets do we have, and how much recycling capacities do we have, right? So for rigid plastics, which primarily most of the recyclers operate in, so HDP and PET, we are good. I mean, we still have overcapacity of 50%. But if you look at flexible plastics, we are undercapacitated by 60%, which means we do not have enough recycling facilities, but we are still putting these materials out. And that's something to look at. I mean, if we do not have these recycling facilities at the tail end, should companies be paying more to put these kind of plastics on the market? So again, I'll stop here. I have a lot to share, but I think
I totally agree to your point about the geography which you shared.
Yeah.
Ki recyclability of the material also depends on the geography. For example, in Pune, if you look at the brown medicine bottles and the colored PET bottles, which is used for drinking water, it's not at all accepted. It goes into reject. But if you're in Delhi, if you go to Technikalam, you'll find huge piles of these materials, which is being sold and aggregated and transferred to the other recycling also. Next, in terms of EPR, that I would like to add on, for this formal sector, addition of a particular quantum of recycled material could be a mandate that has been set up recently. But in informal sector, for ages it has been done. If you look at us 10 years back also, there have been a low quality material, chairs or household items, in which they have put a hell lot of recycled materials. So I think this is nothing new. That it's just that they have put up a nice face to it, and it's being formalized and it's being mandated that each and every informal entity should be adhering to it.
If I'd just like to add, so what you shared was very important, I think, Siddharth, and I'd like to direct that question to the three other panelists as well, because this impacts them in their real life experiences, in their professions, actually. So, do you think EPR has done enough to protect recyclers and aggregators, and especially with the macroeconomic changes that we've seen in the recent years? Have you felt protected by the government despite being such a core industry in terms of both environmental protection and the informal sector protection as well?
So as Siddharth ji rightly said, that intent is really very good. And not only good, I believe it is one of the best in the world. Yes, we need change. First, recyclers don't require EPR. They don't need that. This is a pure business for me. I'm doing for a long time and without any EPR in place. So why is the requirement of EPR? EPR is required, I believe, EPR is required just to collect the waste which is not being collected, just to recycle the waste which is not being recycled. Like Rajita said, that we need R&D to recycle many types of plastics. So many recycling companies have patent of many other things. We have patent where we have separated layers of multi-layer packaging. So when we have separated layers, that is the only challenge in MLP. Otherwise, it is a virgin polymer, both layers, 3 layers, 5 layers, all are virgin. So it will be revolutionary when it will be successfully scaled up. That requires R&D, that needs funds. Again, as many panelists already said, that geographically, when you are, say, collecting waste in Assam or any interior part of Tripura or West Bengal or, say, multi-layer packaging, when you say, ask me low value and high value, I believe any plastic which is lower than, say, 12 to 13 rupees per kg is low value plastic. Why I say that? Because transportation for flexibles needs at least 5 to 6 rupees. A middleman also need 1 or 2 rupees to buy from here and sell it there. So it costs them 8 rupees. If you are selling at 12, means the whole mechanism will get only 4 rupees. Picking up from the road, segregation and many other, but which is not practically possible. So I believe in EPR, what we need is 2-3 major changes. One is categories are incorrect. Category 1, 2, 3, 4, it's not getting any benefit. So what we need is difficult to collect, easy to collect, difficult to recycle, easy to recycle. That is the only way. There should not be any cap, say 5 rupees kg or whatever. You need more than 1,000 rupees to collect sachets, a kg. You know, nobody can pick up half kg and he needs at least 500 rupees anyone. If you impose that kind of system, of course, companies will think about it, change their dynamics. I mean, multi-layer packaging is not a problem at all. If you just replace the material polyester with cycloolefin copolymer, this is another polymer. It is 100% recyclable with PP, LDP or any other polymer. You don't have to separate layers or any challenge. Why they are not using it is because it is 300 rupees a kg and they are getting a material polypropylene and LDP at 100 rupees kg. So when comparing to 1,000 rupees kg of collection, what I want to say is that should be a balance. I mean, if you are putting sachets into the market, you cannot collect by the bigger bags. You have to collect that sachets, or you have to make a mechanism to collect that bag. So that is one thing. Second, why EPR rates are so low? Because we have weakened the rule by allowing waste to energy plant or cement plants EPR equivalent to recycling plant. They are burning waste 1,000 tons daily and putting up the recycling units of 10 tons per day is very high cost. And you need a lot of efforts to put that. And the balance, it should not be allowed. In current year, yes, there is a change. They have changed to 50%. They have mandated to use 50% into recycled content and it will increase. Third, in recycled content. I don't know, it was deliberate or what. In India only, we have allowed PIR also. It is not mentioned that it is PIR, but it is not also mentioned that you cannot use PIR, post-India recycled, as a recycled material to balance that your recycled content. So let's take an example of flexibles. In current year, we need 10% of flexibles to comply with the rule. So what these companies are currently doing, they already have their 10% post-industrial waste. They are putting up a recycling unit, spending zero on waste collection and anything, and recycling their post-industrial waste and balancing their thing. And many companies, I'm sorry to say, but many companies are showing that 10% into 20% now. You cannot check that, what they are doing. So they are showing that their in-house waste is 20%, and they are recycling 20, putting a bag into the system, and they have additional 10% certificates. So we need these type of changes in the EPR, and it is a beautiful concept.
Lakshmi has a question.
Yes.
No, for the live.
Sorry to button. It's not a question so much, but it's a private conversation, and I just wanted to bring it out here. Nandini from CII wanted to ask. She asked me what, in my opinion, should we do about small format, basically sachets, which are 1 and 2 rupees worth. And my position on it is pretty similar to yours. I was saying that the industry that produces it should figure out the way to recycle it. And if that means that their cost of recycling it is going to make the product 50 times more expensive, so be it. Let consumers stop buying it. Let them figure out what to do. She had 2 follow-up questions. One is, what can we do in terms of design? We have some ideas floating about design. If small flexible formats are shifted to mono-material, would workers be interested? My take on it is that one is the material type, which makes it easy to recycle, but the other is the size format. There is a size format which makes it ridiculous for any worker to bend down 1,000,000 times to pick up 2 kilos worth of this. So yes, it should be sold at 1,000 rupees a kilo. We'll all do it. I'll pick it up myself. But it should be a fair rate that makes it easy for anyone to pick it up. Why do some materials which are recycled not even reach the recyclable market, like Imtiaz ji said? Because people are selling it, people are retrieving it at multiple levels. So that's my take on that. The other is, if fiber-based packaging were to come in and substitute for plastic in any significant quantity, how might this help or harm the current situation? So again, because it will still be littered, because the format will not allow for picking. It's back to sensitivities. Are we okay with leaf waste sitting on the ground? It's very degradable, but every housing society wants it swept off, doesn't want it as mulch on their, even for their vegetable gardens or plant gardens, because it doesn't look good enough. So some of these things, are we ready to settle for that? Or do we all want spanky, shiny indoor models everywhere where it's cleaned up and removed through some mechanical device, which is going to increase the carbon footprint and everything? But please, I would just request you to address your further questions there so that we can get responses. And especially as a person from CII, because I think industry does get a lot of these small CSR suggestions and supports, and sometimes the recyclers or the waste picker groups will say it's simply not viable and the pilot looks fantastic, but it just doesn't work to scale.
Yes, Imtiaz ji or Rosita, please go ahead.
I'm actually in agreement with you. Kind of asked the question and answered it. I'm in agreement with that. So actually, we have also been hearing about like several organizations, FMCG companies moving towards mono-material, which will be great. Of course, helps a lot of the process, but the pace of it is really slow still. So we don't see that happening like very soon, right? And in the same way, there are these reuse and refillable solutions coming up, but those also seem really at the pilot scale. Previously to this, when I was working in the development organization, we really tried hard if this could be scaled up, but it seemed like the intention also there by some of the private sector companies was to limit it to a certain scale and not scale it up. So there are a lot of these, hard conversations to be having with these players, and how our way of tackling of having these hard conversations is like, what is the problem with this, kind of like a sachet, how can we solve it? How can you collect it? And like, we as innovators can work on it, because even they don't know if they will collect it, what happens to it. So that's how this POC came into picture, where they said, okay, like make something out of it. Can we make something out of it? Can we put a value to it? So that will incentivize them as well to invest in it. So it's quite of like a chicken and egg story. And then my views on APR is completely in alignment with our panelists. The intention was right, and we have achieved certain things till this point. Now, will the same set of regulations take us ahead? Perhaps not. So, in agreement with also the policy recommendations you had put, very important to keep challenging that. So, that was like EPR phase 1, phase 2. But what's going to be the next version? Can we amend things? Can we really adapt? And the model that you shared from your experiments of 2-3 years, what you shared, that's also valuable, right? So, we need to have these hard conversations. So, while EPR started with a good intention and we saw the number of like MRF centers being set up in our country, a lot of inclusion of Safai Sathis that happened, right? But beyond that, the sad part is when you visit some of these collection centers and you mentioned that like so much energy, so much effort, so much cost in collecting the streams, and then it's going to the cement plant to be burned or it's going to the incinerator. So clearly that shouldn't be happening. Because imagine the investment and the whole, thing that we've, kind of like done on this, and then what is happening with that collected waste. So it definitely should not be going into cement, plants and incinerators. There should be more solutions, but then there are gap of like, again, the innovation or R&D capacity. Like for us, for instance, it's really hard to get VC money from Indian investors for sure, who are not patient. Globally, the appetite is great. We've got lots of interest from investors who want to be patient capital, give patient capital, be on this journey, because this is not like a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. We are in it for decades. It's a long game for us. But again, for us, as coming from the startup space, which is not supported very strongly sometimes. How do we get the investment, right? So right now we've, in the past 5 years, invested, I think the founder, their family, with the family rounds, and some few, interesting green investors have invested $1 million. With that $1 million in the past 5 years, we've been able to achieve this. We're able to deliver a patented technology. We're able to now very, proudly launch this 200 kg capacity next month. But to take us forward, like you said, to work in other geographies, if we have this kind of like software, right? If we have to translate this software to everywhere else, we will need capital for it. And our intention is to actually go into geographies other than Pimpri Chinchwad. It's just that we want to get the technology right in this one sandbox before we do that. But that requires a lot of, like, again, patient capital. Yeah.
Yeah, if I can add a few nuances. I mean, the whole idea behind EPR was also that the policymakers do recognize that there's an entire, force or a value chain that's working to make recycling possible. It's not just about the recycler. It's also about city governments. It's also about kabadiwalas. It's also about informal sector. And what we found in the 2021 study was usually the thought process is that there's a competition between the formal and informal, but it's absolutely not that. It's more about the formal industry being fed by the informal workforce, and that's how we work in India. The formal industries only survive because the informal does what it does, right? So the idea was that a part of this money trickles down to city governments, to MRF operators, to informal sector people. All of that is not happening in EPR right now, right? It's end to end. So it's the PBOs, it's the PWPs, and there's a transaction between them. That's it, right? It's all on paper. So you don't really need to get on the ground, spend some money to collect waste, show some proof that you've actually collected waste, right? It's just a transaction, right? And the amounts are meager, right? Like I said. Something that is kicking in from this year, if I'm not wrong, is the recycled content targets, right? So we've already started seeing bottles saying that 100% recycled content, maybe 2030. Now, the problem is that we do not have technologies to validate any of these claims, right? And from what I have understood, again, I may be wrong. I'm happy to learn from any of you who know about this, but even the recycled content claim is just about paperwork. I should have receipt which says that I have procured, let's say, 100 tons of recycled content. It's not important that I use it in my product. Also, because our regulations do not allow a lot of stuff, recycled stuff, to be incorporated, right? Especially for food grade materials. So it's just about procurement right now. And it's going to be like that if we do not talk about it, challenge it enough. The third thing that I am particularly concerned about, and so should the formal recyclers be, is the recyclate quality that we eventually end up making, right? If our recyclers are not able to adhere to the quality standards that the PBOs or the brands have to kind of what they demand, eventually what we will see is a lot more demand for recycled plastic. I mean, that will be have to be met through imports, right? And the people or the stakeholder who lose out is essentially the local recycler, who's absolutely not able to match, due to contamination issues at source, due to XYZ reasons, cost issues. So that's my
Great insight, Siddharth. Any more question from the audience?
Many questions and I'd like to hog the floor, but we'll open it up to the audience as well. We have Pankaj from Grant Thornton.
Thank you, Gandhara. I think it's very difficult to hold you back. So have experienced that firsthand. Rajesh, we studied the MLP with your inputs. You were not there, Rosita, but we visited without as well for that study. And more recently, Siddharth, we have interacted earlier, Imtiazi, during the SBM interaction with the Indore. So a lot of great insights, I must say. First of all, it's always a pleasure hearing all of you, all these learned people come together, share those learnings. So thank you, Swach, for organizing this and inviting us all to be here. And more recently, I just wanted to also share that with the MLP, we had suggested at least the composition part that Rajesh you had shared. But the issue is that we are looking at this low value, we may recall. Now, one solution is to increase the value, as you said. The other is to look for the commercial solutions for these, right? And more recently, we visited Deluxe. They are doing amazing job, if you guys want to know, especially with the three-wheelers, the boats, MLPs. And it's an amazing scale, 20,000 ton per annum, right? Similarly, Revalue and Dalmia. Amazing partnership, very few success stories in the waste value chain where two organizations have worked very collectively together and grown together. So now each of them have, raised $100 million. They are expanding exponentially and in a very unique geography that is Nasik. Nobody thought that as being a recycling hub. And why I'm mentioning all this background is that I think the other important area which you touched upon is the R&D. Now, within that, we looked at we looked at the SSP, which is the solid state polymerization, and Revalue, they are doing the chemical sort of recycling, if you may. So can we look at all these ingredients together to identify the high volume commercial solutions for this low value MLP or low value plastic, whatever the rejects that you may call, and use these technologies to see that can we identify some sort of a solution around it. And on that, actually, I wanted to get your perspective, your experience, that what are the challenges? Now, these technologies are working for PET or for a particular kind of material. Why can't they work for MLP? Can we look at these demand-based pull rather than, the push from the supply side? Would that be easier? Because once it makes business sense for a recycler, as you said, EPR is not even needed. Because then you know that the market itself will take care with all the demand. And then we have these green procurement policies and the other bits to create that initial nudge. But I wanted to understand what are these challenges, which is, because the solution we are seeing on the market for are these the same, the pellets, the same granules, the same gutta. We haven't moved much beyond this. Even then, there are these players who are doing it to a certain part of the value chain. Then why cannot it be done for the MLP and the low value?
So first of all, congratulations. Thank you so much for putting so much efforts on multi-layer packaging. The kind of work you are doing, that is required here. So multi-layer packaging is why it is different. It combines of two or more than two types of polymers with different families, different melting temperatures, and it was easier with the PET or any other polymer. But as Rojita is doing a bit of chemical recycling, say depolymerization of a polymer, we have separated layers, and I believe many other recyclers and many other companies are working on it. I'm very much confident about the kind of plastic industry. I mean, of course, there are challenges with waste and all, but you will, all of you will agree that plastic industry has evolved a lot in last 40, 50 years. Plastic industry started with thermoset materials, bakelite, then PVC, and then polyolefins, engineered polymers, and now high temperature polymers. When we say high temperature polymers, EV is not possible without plastics. I mean, the basic requirement of any EV is lightweight, and you have to replace metal with plastics. When I share this, I just want to share another point on sustainability. This is going to be a very big challenge very soon. We don't have, not only us in India, I mean, more than 99.9% countries in the world don't have recycling facilities for PP, ECU, PE, SU. We will hear more about these after 10 years when these EVs will be dismantled. On multi-layer packaging, again, of course, we need funds. So it is a combination of an answer on EPR on this. So recycling industry don't require any EPR funding. That is a business. EPR is required to collect waste and to recycle waste. And indirectly, as Siddharji also asked about how it is helping informal sector. So if we are able to say scale up recycling of multi-layer packaging in any way, we will be buying, means any recycler will be buying waste at a higher price. So this money will go to the waste collection only. It is a direct connect, not indirect. On the redesign also in EPR, so we have suggested many things. I hope it will be there. I don't know when, but it will be there. You have to remove colors from your bottles. I mean, who need a red color of bucket or red color of powder? If it can be recycled easily, suppose why PET is easily recyclable in comparison to all other polymers is you can identify it at the source. This is PET. Anyone who collects that, he knows that it is PET, and you need an aggregator who collect and bale it and make a truckload and send it to recycling units. But in case of easy to recycle plastics, I just want to focus on that first before MLP. Say polypropylene and HDP. I'm in this sector for a long time, but I have material recovery facilities in Goa, in Assam, where my team could not segregate. Because it's not easy to identify polypropylene and HDP also, which is mostly recyclable in India. So what we have to do on a policy front is just remove color from, say, any one polymer, say, use maximum PP in transparent, use HDP in white. You can easily identify and segregate. One, easy segregation. Two, the waste will get at least 3 times value out of it. I mean, the mix waste of PP, HD, mixed color is the waste aggregator who is supplying to recycling unit is getting 20 rupees a kg, but the white HDP or transparent PP is getting around 65 to 70 rupees. So it will be transferring to that picker also. Third one is very important, downcycling. So downcycling will not be done. I mean, that level will be very lower. You cannot recycle red to green or blue or green. You have to go dark red and darker red and darker red and brown. In case of white and natural, it is not the case. So these type of solutions will definitely come today or after 20 years when we will be burdened with this the landfills. On multi-layer packaging, 2 lines. So we need, whosoever is working in this sector need, first of all, redesign. Suppose the layer, one biscuit manufacturer is using, say, polyester and PP, and other one is using LDP. So that should be stopped. I mean, there should be a mandate. If one producer, why you need a polyester? For barrier properties, that I understand. Until we have a good material which will replace, like we have cycloalpine copolymer. So there should be a mandate that if it can be used, a fully recyclable material, and it is costing you higher, as you said, let it be. You spend it there. And in case till that rule comes up, you have to invest in recycling of difficult to recycle waste. That is required. And EPR can do that.
I have one small request. Nalini has a question. We have 10 minutes remaining. We can extend it to 15, of course, but let's keep the answers short and quick.
Yeah, Siddharth, this is for you. One of the recommendation they're talking about is reducing the adhesives. And we have seen in plastic treaty also, they have not been very open to it, how open they will be. I think that is the key. The rest of it, we have been talking about monopolymer for a long time. That is a thing. And the second recommendation I would really look at is the environment clearances. What you're talking about CTE and CTO. With addition to that, we also have to look at electricity. It's big issue when you want to set up a new system. And so if you can add that also is what I would recommend.
Very true. Thank you.
On the additives, yeah, I agree. Use of additives is more about the brand. It's more about the product. So you will not see a pink colored face wash that is targeted towards the male audience. It's always navy blue, black, right? So it's more about marketing the product. And one of the recommendations that I think really hits home is the design standardization, and which is also something that being talked in the plastic treaty. I think that is the key to a lot of what can be collected, what can be recycled, what kind of technologies do we need. It's the go-to spot, and that's where most of the energy should kind of be focused on. Just to add, now that I'm speaking, and I'll keep it short, I was in a meeting in Mahua, and I was surprised to see how most of the people were, they were clinging to this technology called waste to energy. How can we increase the capacity? Nobody talked about source segregation in the entire meeting. I am seeing a similar pattern where we are trying to cling to multi-layer packaging, trying to cling that technology will solve this problem, right? Let's get over it. Technology does solve a lot of issues, but it has consistently failed in the most developed parts of the world. We've seen the biggest chemical recycling plant fail in Texas. They've not been able to scale up for the past 30 years. They're not going to scale up in the next 30, right? So what do we do for this 30 years, the next 30 years, right? And it's not about clinging to technology or a material. It's about getting over it. So I'll stop here.
Next question.
Rajiv, want to add about electricity?
Yeah. Like to add on the electricity aspect which Nalini mentioned. While we were looking for the suitable site for setting up our own recycling unit, we had to go to around 20 to 25 different sites to see whether the kind of electricity required to run a unit is all there or not, because it requires minimum 100 HP. That means it will demand a separate transformer to run this unit, and it comes at a cost. Even if a private entity tries to set up, it will cost minimum 15 to 20 lakh rupees. And if we go to a facility where it has this sort of power supply, it costs a huge rental is there. So I totally agree to the point which Nalini mentioned.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me here. I'm Swati Sambyal. Wonderful reflections, and so happy to be around some old colleagues and friends in this hall. I do agree to Siddharth over waste to energy to start with. That's something that really shakes me from the seat, that probably it's the biggest joke of the 21st century. In a time when we're talking about circular economy and minimalism, I think it only promotes a culture of maximum. Coming to a few set of questions that I have, and I promise to keep it brief. We've been talking about pilots, and I feel we're sitting in 2025. I've
I've been in several of these meetings, and we're still talking about pilots in 2025. So my question probably to Rosita and Imtiaz ji, Rajiv, and probably Rajesh and Siddharth, if you want to come in, would be that how can we mainstream some of these interventions that you are doing? And I think somewhere we missed the track on waste pickers. How can they be centered, in innovation and technology and mainstreaming some of the interventions that you're doing, especially the folks at Without? And secondly, how can standardization play a crucial role for recycling? We're also talking about alternatives. You think polymer instruments such as polymer fees can be a disincentive to the use of virgin polymers and, would allow, more alternatives into the value chain? Or do you think even alternatives practically as of now is not possible, and we should rather strengthen what we have? So your views and reflections around it. Thank you.
I think on alternatives, you can comment, you have a better overview. and then
So
I'll come to this.
on alternatives, I believe, yes, some of can be used, but more than 95% we cannot use that. Economics is one reason, and life cycle analysis is second reason. If you go through what I could get life cycle analysis reports, I go through at least 20-21 reports, and most of it are saying that plastic is better on life cycle analysis. But I'm not favoring plastics right now. So major problem is not plastic, major problem is design, major problem is waste litter. So if we compare India with the Western world, in waste source segregation, they are very good. In recycling, India is very good. I'm sure India will be at the top very soon. The kind of recycling units we have put up in PET, and many more recycling companies are coming up. And this is possible only because of the strong network of waste pickers. The kind of post-industrial, post-consumer waste we are recycling, that is amazing. I mean, you will not find a single person in Germany or USA who can identify plastic, and we have many. On technology and again on strengthening waste picker system and waste aggregators, I believe now India is also using technology to segregate waste. The best technology available in the world can give you 92% accuracy in segregation. That is not good enough to recycle plastics. And it also don't work on black, which is around 30 to 40% of total plastic waste. So what we need is to train. We are working with the Council for Green Jobs also on that, to put up a course where these waste aggregators will run these machines and then do segregation of the other 8% left out. They can easily get a very high, in Indian currency, 3 to 4 lakhs rupees per month job in Europe today. I mean, easily 200 jobs are available today for these waste aggregators. But they can get it when they have this course. And next year, I'll show you that this is possible. Again, I'm not very much confident about alternatives.
मल्टीलेयर प्लास्टिक और मोनोप्लास्टिक, एक्चुअली इश्यूज क्या है सबको पता है, और कलेक्शन मैकेनिज्म अगर स्ट्रांग होगा और एस्ट्रो सेग्रीगेशन होगा तो बेटर तरीके से उसको ट्रीट भी किया जा सकता है, रिसाइकल भी किया जाता है, और जो टेक्नोलॉजी है उससे उसका डिस्पोजल भी किया सकता है। अब इसे करना किसको है? सरकार को करना है। अब सरकार से इस काम को कैसे कराना है, हमें, मुझे लगता है इस मंच पे वो बात करनी थी कि ये जो इश्यूज हैं, इन इश्यूज का सॉल्यूशन क्या हो सकता है। गवर्नमेंट में जो पॉलिसी बनती है, वो पॉलिसी कैसे बनती है? शायद ईपीआर की अगर मैं बात करूं तो न्यू जो ईपीआर पॉलिसी बनी है वो कुछ तथाकथित रिसाइकलरों द्वारा ही वो पॉलिसी बनाई गई है, जिसमें वैस्ट पिकर और रैक पिकर्स और जो निचले लेवल की कम्युनिटी थी उसको एकदम अलग करके जो बेनिफिट ईपीआर के ग्रास रूट्स के वर्कर्स को मिलने चाहिए थे वो सारे बेनिफिट्स मिल रहे हैं आज रिसाइकलर्स को। अभी सर ने भी इस बात को कहा कि रिसाइकलर्स को ईपीआर की जरूरत नहीं है, ईपीआर की अगर जरूरत है तो ग्रास रूट्स पे। तो इसके लिए हमने एक छोटा सा ट्रायल्स मध्य प्रदेश में किया। हमने
so many things we deal with all the time. One is I'm very, very frightened of biodegradable and compostable packaging in the market today. We've talked about it, Siddharth. It is frightening. And for a recycler, it is even more frightening. I don't know what to do about that. Second, on sachets, I'm very worried again. And among the many solutions available, many things that we should be thinking about, I am willing to consider even moving to smaller rigid containers. Let us say they have a better value, density of material is greater. I want to understand what you feel about that. Not for everything, certain products, certain markets, is it worth considering? Consider करना भी चाहिए या नहीं? क्योंकि आपने पैराशूट की बात उठाई थी, and पैराशूट छोटा भी आता है 20 ml में. अगर वो बिक सकता है, वो कलेक्ट हो सकता है, तो फिर 20 ml के तो sachets we can remove from the market, right? Is this something that I can propose to the companies who are working with India Plastics Pact? I want your ground level opinion on this. And one more thing on sachets. Yes, large companies rely on them. We still don't know how much of their profit comes from sachets. But I'm saying, suppose किसी ideal दुनिया में हम लोग sachets हटा देते हैं, तो SMEs जिनका बहुत income cheap packaging में small sizes में आता है, उसका क्या होगा? अभी SMEs are not under EPR. Of course, they will come in a few years. They will. But if you could please just these two things, mainly on rigids, replacing sachets to some extent, and this one about SME वाला जो उनके ऊपर अभी EPR नहीं है, तो they can continue making sachets.
वैसे मैम सैशेज जो बना रहे हैं ना वो SMEs कम बना रहे हैं। इंडिया में यूफ्लेक्स सबसे ज्यादा बनाता है। करेक्ट हाँ, सैशेज जो बनाता है वो यूफ्लेक्स बनाता है इंडिया में सबसे ज्यादा, इंडिया लार्जेस्ट प्रोड्यूसर है इंडिया का। और ऑफ कोर्स जहाँ चेंज हो सकता है एमएलपी को चेंज करना चाहिए, नॉट ओनली सैशेज, जहाँ भी मल्टी लेयर पैकेजिंग। सी वाई वी नीड मल्टी लेयर पैकेजिंग, बिकॉज देयर इज बैरियर प्रॉपर्टी। अगर मैं अब्रॉड जाता हूँ, मुझे हिंदुस्तानी खाना पसंद है, तो मैं हल्दीराम का वो लेके जाता हूँ, उसमें मुझे चाहिए मल्टी लेयर पैकेजिंग। लेकिन मैं जो कंज्यूमर इसका फायदा उठाता हूँ उसको मैं ठीक से डस्टबिन में नहीं डालता हूँ, मेरी गलती है। अगर हम कंपैरिजन करते हैं अपने आप को जापान से, मैं वहां पर गया और लोग वहां पर जो थर्मोकोल भी आज यूज कर रहे हैं वहां बैन नहीं हुआ है। थर्मोकोल का प्लास्टिक हाई वैल्यू प्लास्टिक है। पीईटी आज हम 40 रुपीज 48 रुपीज रिसाइकलर खरीद रहे हैं और थर्मोकोल का प्लास्टिक मैं 70 रुपीज में खरीद रहा हूँ। यूएस में जापान में वो लोग थर्मोकोल का प्लेट में कुछ खाने के बाद उसको वॉश करके डस्टबिन में डालते हैं, वहां मैंडेट है, यहाँ पर नहीं है। यहाँ रूल्स बहुत अच्छे हैं, मैं कहूँगा ऐसा रूल्स बहुत ज्यादा बनाने की जरूरत नहीं है, कंप्लायंस बहुत वीक है। तो अगर हम सिर्फ कंप्लायंस ठीक कर लें तो प्लास्टिक का प्रॉब्लम तो 60-70% खत्म हो जाएगा। ईपीआर रूल्स में डिजाइन पे बात की गई है, उसको 4-5 साल आगे के लिए छोड़ दिया गया है। एक कमेटी में जब मैंने पूछा कर नहीं, अभी जरूरत नहीं है। अनफॉर्चुनेटली जितने भी फार्म्स में, चाहे मैं बोर्ड्स के नाम नहीं लेना चाहूंगा, जो भी गवर्नमेंट के बोर्ड्स हैं या कमेटीज है, गलती ब्यूरोक्रेट्स की भी नहीं है या मिनिस्टर्स की भी नहीं है। उनको जो रिप्रेजेंट करने जाता है वो ब्रांड्स करने जाता है। कोई भी कमेटी बनती है तो ब्रांड्स की वर्थ ज्यादा है, उनका पैसा ज्यादा लगता है, वो नजर ज्यादा आते हैं। रिसाइकलर्स कम नजर आते हैं और वेस्ट कलेक्शन वाला तो होता ही नहीं कोई वहां पर। तो जिसका पैसा लगता है उस कमेटी में, उसके बाद ज्यादा जो सुनी जाती है। तो मुझे लगता है कि ये कुछ चेंज करने के लिए गवर्नमेंट को कहीं ना कहीं आगे आना पड़ेगा। हम सब लोग ऐसी सभा में पहले भी मिले और आगे भी मिलते रहेंगे, लेकिन सच्चाई यही है कि रूल्स ब्रांड्स की मर्जी से मिल रहे हैं। बहुत अच्छे ईपीआर रूल्स को 2 जगह वीकेंड कर दिया गया, जो मैंने पहले भी बोला। आपने पीआईआर अलाउड नहीं है, रिसाइकल कंटेंट में मेंशन नहीं किया है। ये सिर्फ इंडिया में हो रहा है, अब्रॉड कहीं नहीं हो रहा है। आपने वेस्ट टू एनर्जी प्लांट्स, आई अंडरस्टैंड, जैसे स्वाति जी ने भी कहा, सिद्धार्थ जी ने भी कहा, मैं नाम नहीं ले सकता, मैं एक कमिश्नर के साथ बैठा था म्यूनिसिपल बॉडी की मीटिंग थी एनजीओज की, उसमें उन्होंने साफ बोला कि अब हमारा इंटरेस्ट नहीं है सेग्रीगेशन में, क्योंकि आप जितने भी एफर्ट्स कर रहे हो आप 1% पे भी काम नहीं कर पा रहे हो। और ये भी सच्चाई है कि बहुत सारे एनजीओज बहुत सारे एफर्ट्स कर रहे हैं। मेरे अपने मटेरियल रिकवरी फैसिलिटीज हैं, मेरे अपने रिफिल सेंटर्स हैं, मेरी टोटल वेस्ट का कलेक्शन का 1% भी इनसे नहीं आता है। 99% मेरा अभी भी एग्रीगेटर से आता है और पूरे इंडिया का 99% एग्रीगेटर से ही आता है। तो ये एफर्ट्स बहुत कम है, इसको स्ट्रेंथन कैसे करें? लाइमलाइट में जरूर आ रहे हैं लेकिन एफर्ट्स बहुत कम है। रोजिता ने बहुत अच्छे एफर्ट्स किए तो 200 केजी तक पहुंच पा रही हैं, लेकिन पंकज जी ने जो बताया कि वो जो 2 कंपनीज का नाम लिया वो 2 लाख टन का काम कर रहे हैं साल का। सो कोई कंपैरिजन ही नहीं है ये एफर्ट्स का और उस एफर्ट्स का। ये दिखाने के लिए बहुत अच्छे हैं लेकिन वो 2 लाख टन वाला एक्चुअली काम करेंगे। थैंक यू।
Just a small point, not on this question. I think we have spent time on this question to answer Swati's one part of the question, which was unanswered on pilots and also on the social aspect. So I've had many debates on this, Swati, like because coming from the world where we have also seen large scale programs, right, scaling really fast and scaling out, but then we see that the gains were not sustained. So for me, my compass right now here is that, and we've been arguing a lot about it with lots of debates, that we need to scale right before going fast. And on the social aspect also, I spoke a lot about chemistry, but like actually there's a deep social aspect that we want to focus on, which is again a crazy thing to put a bet on: hire first, skill later approach, which is what we did with our 14 optimizers. We actually onboarded them. They did not have the skill to be in the manufacturing team, but we onboarded them, and from the day one of the job, with their monthly stipends and payments, they were upgraded. So it was a lot of investment on our part to kind of do the skill development, and we feel that if we can do it with a good business model, other industries can do it. So that will be our next level up, because it's not like, as you rightly said, it's not going to happen in one geography, in one tiny scale. Others need to adopt. But for us, we want to walk the talk that if this model can work in these parameters, in these conditions, then others can also adopt. So that will be the hardest for us, where everybody's focusing on technology. As you rightly said, technology is not going to be the only game changer. It's one part of the levers of change. We need to really, and I hate to use this term, donor language, just transition. We also used it a lot before, but it is about just transition. How can a waste picker today, who only is having certain capabilities of collection or थोड़ा बहुत extrusion बना लिया या वो कर लिया, how can they actually do machining? They can learn computers, they can actually run a factory setup. And this is what we want to bet on next, which is the hire first, skill later approach, because there are a lot of skilling programs in the country that in the end invest a lot, and they say 20,000 people trained, they're given a certificate, but the employment doesn't happen. So that's again another thing that we need to look at. So that's the hard challenge we'll take up. Thanks.
We will end with one last. I know everyone. We were at the edge of your seats. This has been great. But we'll end with one last question because we're short of time.
I have one clarification from Rosita. Like you have made goggles, and you're also trying for other products from MLP. I just wanted to know: have you tested the recyclability of these products? Like,
yes, right now it's up to 10 to 15 cycles, and it's getting better every time. And the other thing that we learned with our small 5 kg capacity, which is now going to be 200, the same technology can also look at post-consumer textile waste. So we can do something with textile waste. There's been a small breakthrough in the lab, too early to say. And that's where it's important, because it's like, this is where R&D and tech matters. Sorry, I mean, it's not the only thing that will change, but imagine, we didn't even know going into this thing that we were looking only at MLP, but ab pata chal raha hai, actually the same hardware can also look at post-consumer textile waste. So that's going to be the next R&D sprint, or I don't want to call it pilot. It's like sprint mode to look at textile waste. If that can be done, the same hardware, different softwares, right? That can do.
Thank you, Siddharth, Rajesh sir, Imtiaz ji, Rosita for the time and for the wonderful insight.
Yes. So I was just chatting with Ranjeet, who runs the recycling unit.
Achha.
Ask him, do the
Small
small rigids coming to the unit at all? And they don't.
Neither the ponds, small ponds, neither the borolin, and nor the other thing that you did mention. They don't come in the waste flow.
They're not easy to retrieve either at the scrap shops or the recycling units. You don't see small format of any material. So the difference between 5 rupees a kg and 20 rupees a kg is not enough. You see small metal, so copper and brass and those kind of items, they definitely come. But then you're looking at 5 rupees versus 500 rupees. So that differential between 5 and 20 rupees doesn't make a difference in a size. According to Ranjit, smaller than your hand.
Minimum this.
Yeah, you need
Minimum
minimum
account.
this size.
Then in this case,
Full hand
density
sized.
might play a bigger role
Yeah.
in this case. Thank you for the time and the wonderful insights that you have shared with everyone. And I think this discussion will go on for day and day. Thank you so much. I'll hand over the mic to Lubna.
Take a 2-minute break for like a breather.
Thank you. Just putting up the next. Yes.
हाँ हाँ हो रहा है.
इतना जो बटन ना मैं just screen on नहीं नहीं वो वहाँ पे कर रहे हैं वो ये मत बता ये वो बटन हो रहा है.
अच्छा अच्छा.
We can just take a 2-minute bio break and we'll start in 2 minutes.
You don't talk, okay?
Yes.